English Listening Podcast. TOEIC 800 points. Chapter 1. Corporate Governance and Ethical Leadership. Contemporary discourse on corporate governance increasingly emphasizes the indispensability of ethical leadership in fostering sustainable organizational performance amidst heightened stakeholder scrutiny and regulatory complexity. The fiduciary responsibilities incumbent upon board members necessitate vigilant oversight of executive decision-making processes, while simultaneously establishing accountability mechanisms that transcend perfunctory compliance with statutory requirements. Institutional investors have demonstrably intensified their scrutiny of governance structures, frequently advocating for independent board composition, equitable executive compensation frameworks, and transparent succession planning protocols as prerequisites for capital allocation. Notwithstanding considerable progress in governance reform, the persistent occurrence of corporate malfeasance underscores the insufficiency of procedural safeguards in the absence of an organizational ethos predicated on ethical imperatives and stakeholder stewardship. The integration of environmental, social, and governance (ESG) criteria into strategic deliberations has evolved from peripheral consideration to fundamental investment thesis, compelling executive leadership to articulate coherent sustainability narratives that reconcile profitability objectives with societal impact. Shareholder activism has undergone substantial transformation, transitioning from confrontational tactics toward collaborative engagement strategies that leverage institutional influence to catalyze operational reforms and strategic reorientations. Corporate governance ratings methodologies, despite their inherent limitations and occasional methodological inconsistencies, have acquired considerable influence in investment decision-making processes, particularly among institutional allocators with fiduciary mandates encompassing sustainability considerations. Board diversity initiatives have progressed beyond tokenistic representation towards substantive inclusion of diverse perspectives that enhance decision-making quality through cognitive heterogeneity and experiential breadth. Whistleblower protection mechanisms constitute essential components of robust governance infrastructures, establishing psychological safety for individuals who identify potential improprieties notwithstanding potential organizational repercussions. Corporate ethics programs transcending mere compliance exercises demonstrate empirical associations with reduced misconduct incidents, enhanced employee engagement metrics, and improved risk management outcomes across various industry contexts. The proliferation of stakeholder capitalism frameworks represents a paradigmatic evolution in governance philosophy, challenging traditional shareholder primacy models through explicit recognition of multifaceted organizational responsibilities extending beyond financial performance maximization. Digital transformation governance necessitates specialized board competencies regarding technological disruption, cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and data privacy implications, often facilitated through advisory structures complementing traditional governance bodies. Proxy advisory services exert considerable influence on institutional voting patterns despite controversial methodological approaches and potential conflicts of interest, thereby necessitating thoughtful engagement strategies from corporate leadership. Chapter 2. Macroeconomic Indicators and Global Market Dynamics. Macroeconomic indicators provide essential contextual frameworks for strategic decision-making processes, illuminating systemic trends that influence organizational performance irrespective of operational excellence or competitive positioning. Gross domestic product growth trajectories, while offering retrospective insights regarding economic expansion or contraction, frequently fail to capture distributional inequities or sustainability considerations that increasingly influence consumer behavior and regulatory environments. Inflationary pressures manifest heterogeneously across economic sectors, necessitating nuanced pricing strategies that balance margin preservation against market share protection, particularly in industries characterized by elastic demand profiles or substantial substitution possibilities. Labor market dynamics, including workforce participation rates, compensation trends, and productivity metrics, constitute critical variables affecting organizational talent acquisition capabilities, retention challenges, and operational cost structures. Monetary policy interventions, manifested primarily through interest rate adjustments and quantitative measures, exert profound influence on capital allocation decisions, currency valuations, and consumer spending patterns, thereby necessitating vigilant monitoring by corporate treasury functions. Fiscal stimulus programs implemented countercyclically during economic downturns create temporary demand catalysts while simultaneously contributing to sovereign debt accumulation, potentially constraining future policy flexibility and precipitating eventual austerity measures. Global trade flows remain vulnerable to geopolitical tensions, protectionist policy implementations, and supply chain disruptions, compelling multinational organizations to develop contingency strategies that prioritize operational resilience over maximum efficiency. Foreign exchange volatility presents multifaceted challenges for international operations, necessitating sophisticated hedging strategies that balance cost considerations against risk mitigation objectives while navigating accounting implications. Commodity price fluctuations disproportionately impact industries with substantial raw material dependencies, creating margin pressures that may prove difficult to transmit through value chains characterized by substantial buyer concentration or competitive intensity. Yield curve inversions have historically preceded recessionary periods with moderate predictive reliability, providing cautionary signals for organizations contemplating substantial capital expenditures or strategic acquisitions during late-cycle economic conditions. Consumer confidence indices offer leading indicators of discretionary spending intentions, particularly relevant for sectors characterized by postponable purchase decisions such as automotive, hospitality, and consumer electronics categories. Housing market indicators, including construction starts, existing home sales, and price appreciation metrics, generate extensive economic multiplier effects through associated purchases, wealth perceptions, and labor mobility implications. Manufacturing Purchasing Managers' Indices provide timely insights regarding industrial expansion or contraction trajectories, offering particular utility for organizations integrated within complex supply chains or providing complementary services to manufacturing enterprises. Chapter 3: Technological Disruption and Digital Transformation. Technological disruption has catalyzed unprecedented organizational metamorphosis, compelling enterprises across disparate industries to fundamentally reconsider established business models, operational paradigms, and competitive differentiation strategies. Digital transformation initiatives transcend mere technological implementation, requiring comprehensive organizational realignment encompassing cultural reorientation, process redesign, capability development, and strategic repositioning to fully capitalize on emergent possibilities. Artificial intelligence applications have progressed beyond algorithmic automation toward augmented intelligence frameworks that enhance human cognitive capabilities through sophisticated pattern recognition, natural language processing, and predictive analytics functionalities. The democratization of machine learning capabilities through accessible development platforms has accelerated innovation velocity, while simultaneously intensifying competitive pressures as technological adoption barriers diminish across industry ecosystems. Blockchain implementations have evolved beyond cryptocurrency applications toward enterprise solutions addressing transactional transparency, supply chain provenance, and contractual automation. Though widespread adoption remains constrained by scalability limitations, governance complexities, and integration challenges. Quantum computing advancements portend transformative implications for cryptographic security, molecular modeling, and optimization problems currently bounded by computational constraints, necessitating preemptive evaluation of potential vulnerabilities within existing security infrastructures. Edge computing architectures address latency requirements and bandwidth constraints through distributed processing capabilities, situated proximally to data generation sources, enabling real-time analytical applications and operational autonomy in connectivity-challenged environments. Digital twin methodologies create virtual representations of physical assets or processes, facilitating sophisticated simulation capabilities, predictive maintenance applications, and optimized operational parameters through continuous synchronization with actual performance data. Cybersecurity vulnerabilities have expanded exponentially as organizational perimeters dissolve through cloud adoption, remote work arrangements, and interconnected operational technologies, necessitating zero-trust architectural approaches and comprehensive security governance frameworks. Augmented reality applications increasingly transcend entertainment contexts toward practical implementations in maintenance procedures, complex assembly operations, and professional training scenarios where visual guidance significantly enhances performance outcomes. The proliferation of application programming interfaces has fundamentally transformed organizational technology architectures, facilitating modular approaches to capability development and enabling platform business models predicated on ecosystem orchestration rather than vertical integration. Hyperautomation strategies combine robotic process automation, machine learning, and advanced analytics to address end-to-end process automation opportunities previously constrained by unstructured data dependencies or judgment-intensive decision points. Chapter 4: Environmental Sustainability and Corporate Responsibility. Corporate environmental initiatives have evolved substantively from compliance-oriented approaches toward strategic imperatives, reflecting heightened stakeholder expectations, regulatory trajectories, and competitive differentiation opportunities in carbon-constrained economic scenarios. Decarbonization strategies increasingly incorporate science-based emissions reduction targets aligned with global climate stabilization scenarios, necessitating comprehensive evaluation of Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions sources throughout organizational value chains. Circular economy principles challenge traditional linear production models through systemic approaches to resource utilization, product design, and waste elimination, creating innovational opportunities while simultaneously addressing extractive dependencies and disposal challenges. The proliferation of sustainability reporting frameworks has generated standardization momentum, though methodological inconsistencies and disclosure variations continue to impede comparative analysis and investment decision-making predicated on environmental performance metrics. Renewable energy procurement strategies have diversified beyond traditional power purchase agreements toward innovative structures including virtual power purchase agreements, green tariffs, and community solar participation, expanding accessibility across different organizational contexts and regulatory environments. Water stewardship initiatives increasingly transcend efficiency measures toward watershed-level considerations, including quality maintenance, ecosystem services preservation, and community access implications, particularly in operations situated within water-stressed regions. Biodiversity conservation has emerged as a material consideration for extractive industries, agricultural enterprises, and infrastructure developers, necessitating sophisticated impact assessment methodologies and mitigation hierarchies to address ecosystem dependencies and regulatory expectations. Climate adaptation strategies have acquired urgency paralleling mitigation efforts, compelling organizations to evaluate operational vulnerabilities, supply chain resilience, and infrastructure robustness against intensifying physical climate impacts, including extreme weather events, sea level rise, and temperature pattern alterations. Sustainable finance instruments, including green bonds, sustainability loans, and transition finance mechanisms, have experienced exponential growth, providing preferential capital access for environmentally beneficial initiatives while simultaneously enabling investor participation in sustainability transitions. Environmental justice considerations increasingly influence facility siting decisions, operational protocols, and community engagement approaches, particularly as regulatory frameworks and litigation precedents evolve to address distributional inequities in environmental impact patterns. Product lifecycle assessments provide methodological frameworks for comprehensive environmental impact evaluation from raw material extraction through manufacturing, distribution, utilization, and ultimate disposal, informing design decisions and highlighting improvement opportunities throughout value chains. Carbon pricing mechanisms, whether implemented through regulatory compliance obligations or voluntary internal applications, increasingly influence capital allocation decisions, operational optimization priorities, and strategic portfolio evaluations across carbon-intensive sectors. Chapter 5: Consumer Behavior and Experiential Marketing. Contemporary consumer behavior exhibits unprecedented complexity, characterized by fragmented media consumption patterns, heightened expectations regarding personalization, and value assessments transcending traditional quality-price considerations toward experiential and ethical dimensions. Psychographic segmentation approaches have demonstrated superior predictive validity compared to demographic methodologies, particularly in categories characterized by emotionally driven decision processes or identity-signaling consumption patterns. The proliferation of digital touchpoints throughout consumer journeys has amplified decision complexity while simultaneously generating unprecedented behavioral data that, when appropriately synthesized, enables hyper-personalized engagement strategies resonating with individual preferences and situational contexts. Customer lifetime value models increasingly incorporate advocacy metrics, recognizing the amplification effects of organic recommendation, behaviors facilitated through social platforms, and peer influence dynamics in consideration, sets formation. Experiential marketing strategies prioritize emotional engagement and memorable interactions over transactional efficiency, recognizing that effective connections generate disproportionate loyalty outcomes and premium positioning opportunities in commoditized categories. Sensory marketing techniques leverage neurological research regarding multisensory integration effects on perception formation, employing consistent olfactory, auditory, and tactile elements to reinforce brand associations beyond visual identities. Augmented reality applications enable virtual product trial experiences, mitigating purchase uncertainty while simultaneously reducing return rates and enhancing conversion metrics, particularly in categories characterized by fit considerations or aesthetic compatibility requirements. Behavioral economics principles, including choice architecture, anchoring effects, and loss aversion dynamics, increasingly inform marketing strategy development, website optimization, and pricing presentation approaches to address predictable cognitive biases affecting decision outcomes. Social proof mechanisms have acquired heightened significance amid information abundance, with consumer reviews, user-generated content, and testimonial narratives frequently exerting greater persuasive impact than traditional marketing communications regarding product efficacy or service quality. Customer journey orchestration capabilities enable consistent experience delivery across touchpoint ecosystems, addressing fragmentation challenges through integrated data infrastructure, predictive engagement logic, and contextually appropriate interaction modalities. Subscription business models have expanded beyond content categories toward product sectors including apparel, nutritional supplements, and household consumables, creating predictable revenue streams while simultaneously generating proprietary consumption data for personalization applications. Voice commerce interfaces have reduced transactional friction for replenishment purchases while presenting substantial search optimization challenges, necessitating structured data implementation and natural language processing capabilities to maintain competitive visibility. Chapter 6: Strategic Risk Management and Organizational Resilience. Strategic risk management frameworks transcend traditional hazard mitigation approaches to encompass comprehensive evaluation of uncertainties affecting organizational objectives, competitive positioning, and value creation capabilities. Enterprise risk management methodologies integrate previously siloed risk categories including operational, financial, strategic, and compliance domains, facilitating holistic assessment of interdependencies, cumulative exposures, and potential cascade effects previously obscured through compartmentalized analysis. Scenario planning exercises systematically explore plausible future states characterized by divergent assumptions regarding critical uncertainties, enabling preemptive strategy adaptation and capability development despite fundamental unpredictability in complex operating environments. Risk appetite articulation establishes explicit parameters regarding acceptable risk exposure levels across different organizational activities, creating decision-making guardrails while simultaneously empowering entrepreneurial initiative within established boundaries. Organizational resilience transcends business continuity planning to encompass adaptive capacity development, enabling effective response to emergent challenges regardless of their specific manifestation or correspondence to predetermined scenarios. Supply chain vulnerability assessments have acquired renewed urgency following disruption experiences, prompting reevaluation of inventory policies, supplier concentration risks, geographical dependencies, and logistics alternatives previously optimized for efficiency rather than robustness. Reputational risk management acknowledges the accelerated velocity of narrative propagation through digital channels, necessitating proactive stakeholder relationship cultivation, crisis communication preparedness, and authentic purpose articulation aligned with organizational behaviors. Geopolitical risk monitoring has expanded beyond traditional political instability considerations toward technonationalism implications, regulatory fragmentation trends, and strategic competition dynamics that increasingly influence market access conditions and operating parameters. Cyber resilience strategies acknowledge the inevitability of security incidents despite preventative investments, focusing capability development on detection efficiency, containment effectiveness, and expedited recovery processes to minimize operational disruption and information compromise. Strategic investment in organizational redundancy, frequently through distributed operational footprints, alternate supplier qualification, and capability duplication, intentionally sacrifices efficiency optimization for resilience benefits that generate asymmetric value during disruption scenarios. Dynamic risk quantification methodologies employ probabilistic approaches, including Monte Carlo simulations and stress testing applications, to evaluate potential financial implications across risk categories, informing capital allocation decisions and insurance strategy development. Third-party risk management programs address extended enterprise vulnerabilities through comprehensive onboarding assessment, continuous monitoring mechanisms, and contractual protection provisions designed to mitigate dependence risks without sacrificing specialization benefits. Chapter 7: Workplace Transformation and Organizational Psychology. Workplace transformation initiatives increasingly transcend physical environment reconfiguration to encompass fundamental reevaluation of work modalities, collaboration methodologies, and performance management approaches aligned with emergent organizational priorities and employee expectations. Hybrid work arrangements necessitate intentional orchestration of synchronous and asynchronous collaboration patterns, addressing inclusion challenges for distributed teams while preserving organizational culture cohesion and knowledge diffusion capabilities. Physical workspace design increasingly emphasizes activity-based environments, offering differentiated settings optimized for specific work modalities, recognizing heterogeneity in concentration requirements, collaboration patterns, and environmental preferences across diverse workforces. Organizational network analysis provides empirical insights regarding informal influence patterns, collaboration bottlenecks, and knowledge flow dynamics typically obscured within formal reporting structures, enabling targeted interventions to enhance innovation diffusion and cross-functional integration. Psychological safety constitutes a foundational prerequisite for innovation cultures, creating environments where interpersonal risk-taking, including voicing divergent perspectives, acknowledging mistakes, and challenging established assumptions, occurs without fear of negative consequences. Employee experience design applies customer experience methodologies toward workforce interactions, systematically evaluating moments that matter throughout employment life cycles to enhance engagement, productivity, and retention outcomes through intentional experience crafting. Diversity and inclusion initiatives have progressed beyond representation metrics toward belonging cultivation and cognitive diversity leveraging, recognizing that heterogeneous perspectives enhance problem-solving capabilities when supported by inclusive leadership practices and equitable advancement pathways. Purpose alignment between individual values and organizational mission demonstrates empirical associations with discretionary effort, retention intention, and advocacy behaviors, particularly among knowledge workers with substantial employment alternatives. Performance management evolution reflects recognition that traditional annual evaluation processes inadequately address contemporary work characteristics, including cross-functional collaboration, innovation requirements, and rapidly evolving objectives. Organizational justice perceptions significantly influence employee attitudes and behaviors, with procedural fairness frequently exerting greater impact than distributive outcomes, particularly regarding change acceptance and authority legitimacy assessments. Talent analytics capabilities enable evidence-based human capital decisions through predictive modeling applications addressing recruitment effectiveness, attrition risk, engagement drivers, and development outcomes previously guided primarily by intuition and generalized best practices. Change saturation phenomena increasingly constrain organizational adaptation capacity, necessitating deliberate prioritization, sequential implementation, and consolidated communication approaches to preserve psychological resources and maintain execution quality amid concurrent initiatives. Chapter 8: Integrated Marketing Strategies and Brand Management. Contemporary marketing strategies necessitate seamless integration across proliferating channels while simultaneously delivering personalized experiences that recognize individual customer contexts without creating privacy concerns or implementation complexity. Omnichannel marketing approaches transcend multi-channel presence to create unified customer experiences characterized by consistent brand presentation, synchronized messaging, and frictionless transitions between digital and physical touchpoints throughout nonlinear purchase journeys. Attribution modeling methodologies continue evolving toward probabilistic approaches that acknowledge the inherent limitations of deterministic models in accurately assigning conversion credit across increasingly complex customer journeys involving numerous touchpoints and extended consideration periods. Programmatic advertising platforms have revolutionized media buying processes through algorithmic audience targeting, real-time bidding mechanisms, and dynamic creative optimization. Though viewability concerns, brand safety considerations, and transparency limitations necessitate vigilant governance frameworks. Brand purpose articulation has transcended differentiation tactics toward authentic positioning centered on societal contribution, requiring substantive organizational alignment to avoid perceived authenticity gaps that generate cynicism rather than emotional connection. Customer data platforms consolidate fragmented information sources, including transactional histories, behavioral signals, and demographic attributes, to construct comprehensive profiles, enabling personalized engagement strategies while navigating increasingly stringent privacy regulations and consumer consent expectations. Influencer marketing strategies have matured beyond celebrity endorsements toward relationship-based partnerships with content creators, demonstrating authentic category interest, audience alignment, and creative integrity that enhances message credibility despite disclosed commercial arrangements. Content marketing effectiveness increasingly depends on sophisticated understanding of search intent patterns, competitive content landscapes, and distribution channel algorithms to achieve discovery objectives beyond creation excellence. Account-based marketing approaches invert traditional demand generation funnels by identifying high-value prospect organizations before tailoring personalized engagement strategies, addressing specific business challenges, and involving coordinated touchpoints across multiple stakeholder positions. Customer advocacy cultivation represents a strategic imperative in environments characterized by abundant information sources and diminished trust in institutional messaging, requiring systematic approaches to facilitating authentic recommendation, behaviors that significantly outperform traditional promotional communications. Neuromarketing research methodologies, including electroencephalography, facial coding, and eye tracking applications, provide insights regarding subconscious processing and emotional responses that complement traditional market research, approaches dependent on articulated preferences and rationalized explanations. Brand valuation methodologies, despite continued methodological debates, increasingly influence strategic decisions regarding portfolio management, licensing opportunities, and investment prioritization across complex brand architectures spanning multiple categories and geographical markets. Chapter 9: Financial Strategy and Capital Allocation. Financial strategy formulation requires sophisticated equilibration of competing priorities, including growth investment requirements, shareholder return expectations, operational flexibility preservation, and financial risk management considerations. Capital allocation decisions fundamentally determine organizational trajectories through explicit prioritization among potential investments with heterogeneous risk characteristics, return expectations, strategic alignment, and optionality implications. Weighted average cost of capital calculations provide theoretical investment hurdle rates, though practical application frequently incorporates strategic premium adjustments for initiatives conferring competitive differentiation benefits or market positioning advantages, transcending quantifiable financial returns. Dividend policy establishment balances income-oriented investor expectations against internal funding requirements, signaling considerations, and taxation implications, with empirical evidence suggesting that consistency and sustainability frequently outweigh absolute yield levels in valuation impact. Share repurchase programs represent increasingly prevalent capital return mechanisms, offering implementation flexibility and potential earnings per share accretion. Though effectiveness ultimately depends on execution, timing relative to intrinsic valuation and opportunity cost considerations versus alternative capital deployments. Capital structure optimization balances financial leverage benefits, including tax shield advantages and enhanced return on equity metrics, against financial flexibility preservation and distress risk mitigation, with industry characteristics and business model volatility significantly influencing appropriate equilibrium points. Working capital management efficiency simultaneously impacts operational fluidity and capital efficiency through inventory policy decisions, accounts receivable management practices, and payment term negotiations with suppliers possessing varying bargaining power positions. Real options valuation methodologies acknowledge the considerable economic value embedded within strategic flexibility, including expansion rights, abandonment possibilities, and implementation timing optionality that traditional discounted cash flow approaches systematically undervalue. Financial risk management frameworks address exposure categories including interest rate fluctuations, currency volatility, commodity price movements, and counterparty default scenarios through comprehensive identification, measurement, and mitigation approaches balancing protection objectives against implementation costs. Mergers and acquisitions frequently destroy shareholder value despite strategic rationales, with empirical studies consistently demonstrating that disciplined approaches emphasizing cultural compatibility assessment, integration planning rigor, and valuation conservatism correlate with successful outcomes. Transfer pricing policies establish compensation mechanisms for intra-organizational transactions across jurisdictional boundaries, balancing tax optimization objectives against operational considerations, management incentive alignment, and increasing regulatory scrutiny of artificial arrangements. Capital expenditure evaluation methodologies have evolved towards sophisticated frameworks incorporating strategic alignment assessment, risk-adjusted return calculations, and portfolio diversification considerations beyond traditional payback period and net present value analyses focused exclusively on isolated project economics. Chapter 10: Leadership Paradigms and Organizational Development. Contemporary leadership paradigms increasingly emphasize contextual adaptability, recognizing that effective leadership approaches vary substantially based on situational characteristics, including organizational maturity, workforce composition, and strategic imperatives, rather than adhering to universalized behavioral prescriptions. Authentic leadership development focuses on enhancing self-awareness, clarifying personal values, and establishing congruence between internal beliefs and external behaviors to build trust-based relationships capable of withstanding challenging circumstances and ethical dilemmas. Psychological capital attributes including hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism demonstrate empirical associations with leadership effectiveness across diverse organizational contexts, particularly during periods characterized by uncertainty, adversity, or transformational change requirements. Vertical development frameworks address cognitive complexity expansion beyond horizontal skill acquisition, enabling leaders to navigate increasingly ambiguous environments through enhanced perspective-taking capabilities, comfort with paradoxical tensions, and systems thinking orientation. Servant leadership approaches prioritize follower development, emphasizing attentive listening, empathetic understanding, and growth facilitation as primary leadership functions rather than directive authority or charismatic inspiration. Adaptive leadership frameworks distinguish between technical challenges amenable to expertise application and adaptive challenges requiring perspective transformation, necessitating different intervention approaches to facilitate productive disequilibrium without overwhelming adaptive capacity. Collective leadership models distribute leadership responsibilities across organizational networks rather than concentrating authority within formal hierarchical positions, recognizing that complex challenges frequently require diverse expertise integration beyond individual capability boundaries. Transformational leadership behaviors including idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration demonstrate consistent associations with enhanced follower performance, particularly for knowledge workers engaged in creative or discretionary effort-dependent activities. Team psychological safety emerges primarily from leadership behaviors that acknowledge personal fallibility, demonstrate curiosity toward divergent perspectives, and respond constructively to reported concerns, creating environments where interpersonal risk-taking flourishes despite natural self-preservation instincts. Leadership versatility development addresses the paradoxical requirements of contemporary organizational environments, including simultaneous demands for strategic visioning and operational execution, forceful direction and collaborative enablement, decisive action and reflective consideration. Neuroleadership applications leverage neuroscience research to enhance leadership effectiveness through evidence-based approaches to decision-making processes, change management methodologies, collaboration facilitation, and self-regulation practices aligned with neurological functioning. Organizational culture transformation requires sustained leadership attention toward behavioral modeling, symbolic actions, recognition mechanisms, and consequence systems that collectively reinforce desired values and gradually reshape collective assumptions regarding appropriate and successful organizational behaviors.